Hello and welcome. I'm Katrina Green, Director of Property Management here at Gray Residential and your host of The Complex, the podcast covering topics related to diverse segments of work required to operate a thriving apartment complex. Today, joining me for a candid discussion is Erica Byrum. She is so well known. I honestly, I think I probably met Erica in person maybe 11 or 12 years ago. And if anyone had told me that I would be having the honor of having her on my podcast at that point, I would have fallen over and been like, you're crazy. That's impossible. But I think that just speaks, to the excitement of this industry and how you just never know. And so again, a great honor for me to have her. I'm going to let her introduce herself in terms of title and, where you work and just sort of that obligatory introduction.
Thanks so much, Katrina, for having me. I love our Ferrentes. It's so good to circle back. But my name's Erica Byrum. I'm the Assistant Vice President of Social Media at Apartments.com, and I direct the business development, product marketing, sales, operations efforts for our social and reputation suite of products. It's a fully managed all-in-one reputation and social media management solution for multifamily properties. And I've been with CoStar for 19 years by way of an acquisition from For Rent, and we carried into the Apartments.com family. And it's so great to be here. I feel honored to reconnect with you. This is great.
So, and I don't know this truly, was this your first job in multifamily?
For Rent was, yeah, my first job in multifamily. Right before multifamily, I was in sports and entertainment, heavy trucking and equipment, and vacation rentals. And then all with the same parent company. So that's how I've been able to keep the 19 years tenure. But in 2006 is my first step into multifamily. I was a marketing manager for ForRent.com, really overseeing the business to consumer, business to business communications. And that was my first stint with social media as well.
Awesome. So full disclosure for our listeners, I started with For Rent in 2011, and I was an account executive and just, out there like pounding the pavement and meeting with operators all over the great city of Indianapolis. And I can vividly remember, very soon after I started, that as part of our marketing, platform that we were selling, it was including social strategy. And I mean, whether we were the actual first or not, in my mind, we absolutely were. And no matter what, our product was, in my opinion, superior. But, talk to me about how you transitioned from what you started to becoming, social media specifically, or even just pitching something like that to your leaders. What did that sound like?
Yeah, I remember in 2006 is when I really started dabbling in with social media. And I remember having to go to leadership being like, hey, I need to get us on MySpace. And they were like, what's MySpace? And I remember our entire company being blocked on MySpace, Facebook. None of us had access. So I had to go through our leadership, our parent company's leadership, to really sell the value of unlocking that just for myself, for test, and then to slowly make that happen across all of our employees. But I had, in 2009, I really had transitioned to just social media. So I moved away from traditional marketing into just pure social media. I even had an OG title. I was like, senior manager of new media marketing. That was like, we didn't even call it social media then. And then in 2010 is when I really started to figure out I needed to monetize social media to get more attention from leadership on the subject and getting them to really buy into the value. And I think you popped in at 2011, which is a year after we had launched, and it was great timing. So 2010, I was promoted to director of marketing. So I went back to marketing, but I kept going back to social. I kept falling into social. And in 2012, I then became the director of social media for both ForRent.com and Homes.com. And then 2017 became the AVP of social. So I just always found myself gravitating towards social. But it was a challenge, explaining the value of social media to leadership. But I'm forever grateful for our leadership, because if it weren't for them allowing me to present ideas and push forward, I would certainly not still be in this space or have so many years of social media under my belt. But once I
wore them down.
I know. I was the girl that was always with a pitch deck ready to present. I remember with Terry and Brock going in with my pitch deck, and I don't even know if they, had bothered to look at the slides, but it was a great conversation to start the dialogue of, I remember noticing so much traffic coming in from MySpace, but I think my success was I aligned myself with our SEO team. I knew what mattered to them was traffic, and I knew I was seeing social media drive traffic. And so I aligned quickly with the SEO team. I had them build out some funnels for me on the back end to really understand how social was coming into forrent.com at the time. And then I would present that data to the leadership to get them to see. And then the other thing that I think was helpful is I had 2 leaders join me at a big SEO conference in San Jose. And I think that was like a really good moment for them to see how big the opportunity was. And then, I just continued to hit leadership with plans for the brand and then also for the monetization side.
Do you find it, I find it wild that some of the conversations you had with them to sell them on social were probably very similar to what I was having in the field with, marketing directors, and not every company has a marketing director. So sometimes I was across from a regional manager, VP of operations, possibly someone not personally active in social, but, and you can speak to this more than I can. Are you still having the same conversation? Like 11, 12 years later?
Sometimes, yes. It depends on the size of the operation that we're talking with, but I do run into it. I talk to marketing directors, operators, owners, leasing teams, regionals all week long, and it's really a mixed bag. I think I've definitely seen a lot of progression in the last 5 years. I'm seeing more and more companies also hire specifically for social media roles, which I think is great. I think that's showing that our industry is evolving.
Mhm.
But I would say it's definitely easier to sell on social media now than in years past, but I still every once in a while will run into a roadblock of we don't see the value, we're not interested in social. But, I think it takes time. Every organization moves at a different speed, and especially if you're really large or really small and you don't have a lot of bandwidth. So I can see both sides.
Also, I think for us, obviously sitting on this side of it now on the operations side, it's all about money,
Mhm.
and not to say that in a greedy way whatsoever, but if we're looking at our marketing budgets and, there maybe was a time where we were just deciding how to fit, some social products and some social assistance, if you will, into that. And now everyone wants a slice. So, whether that's content creation on the video side, content or support, or, network or syndication on the social side, add in like sophisticated CRM money. So the marketing budget's just getting pounded with opportunities to do great things. And, at the end of the day, we're not going to be 105% occupied. So we're still just looking at this sort of like, what does the success look like? Have you seen over time where people have just said, okay, I just have to spend more money, and I need to put social in there? Or are they just saying, look, this is the money I have to spend, and let's figure out how to fit it in if it's that important? Like, have they grown their budgets greatly, or have they just said, no, this is still what I have to spend, and let's replace something with social?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of the two, but I've definitely seen budgets grow in the last few years, which is fantastic. I'm also seeing them invest in their people and sending them. I mean, we've had the multifamily social media summit in Napa for the last 11 years. So that's been great to see. More and more people are coming to that. So that means companies are investing in sending their people there to, get the tools that they need. I would say too, back in the beginning, a lot of people were struggling with identifying where does this budget fit. So I think back in the day, most people were trying to stick it into ILS because we happen to have the ILS product and it was wrapped around that. Then you see, maybe fits in marketing and advertiser. Maybe you're putting some of it in retention. Maybe some of it's going into SEO or software or website or third-party tools. But I'm coming across I had a discussion with a VP of marketing yesterday, and she's really doubling down on their reputation and they want to make the investment. And so I'm seeing companies couple social and rep together. Because I do believe that, reputation is really important for them because it can, help increase your asking rents. It helps with NOI. I mean, there's so much to that. So it's interesting to see where people are sliding it.
I think that's a mindset.
Yeah, exactly.
Because if I put it in ILS, then I expect you to bring me a lead.
Mm-hmm.
And if I put it, somewhere else, maybe I just look at that. Like if it's reputation, I look at it as more like an abstract return,
Right.
because I do think that's the other hard piece. We're sitting here saying, like, show me the ROI, show me the ROI. So, do you have people that are including it and saying, like, how many leases did I get from social? Is that conversation happening?
That conversation definitely happens on occasion, but we make it very clear that social media is not just a lead generator. And I make that clear for our sales force too. I think it's really important to set the expectation up front that while yes, it generates leads, but I think its primary role is brand awareness, helping you to create a strong brand identity while also increasing your digital footprint. And then I also look at the second benefit as SEO. Like, I lean into SEO all the time. I really am a firm believer that all the work that you're doing in social media is sending signals into Google. It's sending, signals into each of the social platforms that you're on to rank you higher. All of the review work that people are doing and answering reviews, responding to reviews, that's all sending signals in. So I really position lead gen as maybe like the third level, right? And because it's so difficult, it's very difficult, as to track that.
It's horribly difficult. Our core property management software doesn't. It's like, I remember getting my first Google Analytics account and getting in there and feeling very just overwhelmed and undereducated. And I remember there's like an 8 series class or course you could take on Google Analytics. And I was just like hot to trot. I was like, I'm going to do this. And I didn't finish it. But, I at least did enough in there to understand how to read, the acquisition of the traffic and referrals. And if I'm being honest, and it's like, and I think this always leads into content, right? But it wasn't like there were any glaring numbers where it was like, oh, if I lost these or if I didn't have this, then my business wouldn't survive. But then I'd always roll right back to being like, yeah, but what am I putting out there? Like, it's not like,
right.
And it feels like work. And I also I hear operators say, well, I can't trust leasing agent, A or B to do this. And I'm like, but you trust them to speak to everyone every day, and you trust them to email, back and forth and just communicate in general. And I'm like, how is it that we have people that we trust to do one thing and not do the other? But if we go back to that sourcing, we don't have multi-source attribution in a great way. I'm not saying it's impossible, but I've always said we have to spend money to get our information out, and then we need to spend some money on influence. And at this point, it is hard with all the prop tech out there to decide where it goes, how to report it in a budget, and then how to measure it, because we want to measure everything, if at all possible. And so I don't know. I remember years ago just being like, I give up, wave the white flag. I'm calling a truce.
I love that.
I'm calling a truce, because if I don't have the ability to measure it, and I don't even need it to be perfect necessarily, it's never going to be perfect, but like, if I don't have the ability to measure it, I'm not going to start picking and choosing what's going to go because I didn't see a lease from that in the last 2 months. And I didn't see that, it all has to just, it has to brew. It's a stew, and you can't microwave it. And I think that's what can get really hard. I remember that being very hard for me when I was on the sales side, because they were just staring at me and being like, show me my leases from my social. And I'm like, well, and I had things to say, but that's how they were just trying to kick it out. I don't know. What do you think about a truce?
Yeah, I like a truce. No, but there are ways that you can look at social media with your cost per lead, your lead conversion, your cost per lease. There are ways that you can calculate that just like you do today. So with cost per lead, for example, you could, if you spent $1,000 in social media marketing and advertising, and you generated 50 leads, then your CPL would be $20. So you can do the same math there. But I do think that the more effective way is to really add UTM codes to everything. So a lot of our large partners have UTMs on their Google, their Facebook, Instagram, you name it, it's everywhere. So at least they're seeing where it's landing in their funnel, monitoring your website traffic, setting up those conversion tracking funnels in through your Google Analytics or anyone else that might be supporting that for you. And then looking at your revenue and your costs, but also there's going to be some I like to call them your vanity metrics that I also think are very important in social, looking at your likes, your shares, your comments, and your click-through rates. But then you don't want to sleep on those positive reviews either, because that's social proof. And that's what we're seeing really influence, your leads as well, because someone could be traveling through the renter journey and they make it all the way to your reviews and you've got a negative review and they just drop out.
Yeah. Yeah. I like, you said social proof. I like that phrase.
Yeah.
I'm gonna write that. If I brought a pen in here, I would write that down. Social proof. Because I think, and also we always focus on reviews in the negative sense. Like even when you just said reputation, it's not like our minds naturally gravitate towards this really positive sentiment, because operators are just used to being torn apart, sometimes because of general landlord tenant policy, sometimes because we mess up and fall down. I mean, it's not, can't blame the public for everything. But yeah, I like that you said, social proof, and start to see some of that. And, on the tag manager side, it's like I think this is where the challenge comes for companies that maybe don't have someone dedicated to this. It's like, even though we might be starting to hire people in the role on the content side, like I just hired for the first time a property specific marketing associate who, and her, primary role is content creation, social health, if you will, like making sure that we have enough out there, that we have the right things out there, that we're pushing on that. And she started like 2 weeks ago. And so, we know that there's like a ramp up period there, but I don't think that everybody's got content creation figured out. And even the big companies, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but if I was a marketing director over 80 properties, how am I managing everyone's social?
It's very difficult. And I think a lot of firms of that size are leaning into a couple of things. If I were, of that size, I would lean into my employees. I would lean into employee generated content. I would lean into influencers. I would lean into my residents. And then, it's appropriate to still outsource some of that social to a third party as well. I think there's nothing wrong with that, because it really allows the third party can help you scale, but it's still giving you that localized feel, because you might have a hybrid model where site teams are still participating.
Yeah.
But I think for someone like you that maybe just hired this role, I would look at it in the sense of batching your content. And this is what I educate this year, what I've been on the circuit just kind of really hyping up, is this concept of batching your content. So thinking about taking tasks that are like and doing them at a single time, versus I think a lot of times the site teams think, okay, I got to check the box, get a piece of content out. I'm going to write it, design it, and schedule it in that moment. Mm-hmm. This model allows you to sort of work ahead, and you can time block, and you can say, okay, I'm going to look at 15 to 20 minutes per day responding to social comments, 30 to 60 minutes per week dedicated to planning my content, and then maybe 2 to 3 hours per month dedicated to batching, writing, filming, editing, producing the content, and then an hour per week dedicated to scheduling. Or you could even look at it from like a Monday through Friday. Like Monday, I'm going to write my captions. Tuesday, I'm designing all the graphics. Wednesday, I'm recording videos. Thursday, I'm editing, and Friday's my scheduled day. So I think it helps you feel less overwhelmed. Mm-hmm. And I know it sounds overwhelming because you're doing so much at once, but actually,
I was just overwhelmed a little bit.
But I promise, batching saves you stacks of time in the long run.
Yeah. And it's not like great that you're saying it that way, because that feels like the best way to accomplish it. But we've tried to teach everyone, just from a time management standpoint, like, hey, have a set time to sit and do your follow-up. Mm-hmm. Have a set time to sit and do, whatever activity you do on the renewal side. And so it really should, if we're able to block our time that way, I think part of our issue is first of all, it's an afterthought. Social feels like extra credit. It's like, and that's horrible I hate to say that, but I just think over the course of the day, and even talking with one of my own leasing associates this week, it was just like, well, yeah, I'd like to start, in one breath, she's telling me, well, yeah, I already followed up with all my leads this morning. Now what do I do? And then, in the other breath, it's like, well, yeah, I'd like to get started, with social. And so obviously there's a barrier there for her, whether it's just, that blank, what do I say today? And I think, to your point, if you had to do it every day like that, it would be really difficult. It would be really, really difficult. How much time then, however you block it out, if I've got an employee that's a standard 40-hour a week employee, and social is on their task list and something important, like how many hours do you think it takes to have something maybe not, top, but effective?
Well, I think it depends on how you're blocking your time. I don't know how to associate the time exactly because everyone works differently and they might use AI or they might use Canva, to expedite their workflow. But I think
Yeah.
everyone should be posting in today's age anywhere from 3 to 4 times a week. If not, if you can do it daily, that's great. But minimum should be 3 to 4 times a week to keep your feeds flowing. Because the worst thing is if someone goes to apartments.com, goes to Google, gets to your website, pops into social and it's dormant, they might lose trust. And so I think that there should be a commitment or an expectation set. And I think we're starting to see that with, we're working with a company right now who established an influencer program for their sites. They nominated one person at each property. We rolled out a whole program for them, and it's part of their, they've got some commission structure built in for it, some bonus opportunities. So, we're seeing different companies look at things differently across the board. But I think if you really want to be effective, there needs to be enough content there to float you each week.
Yeah. Talk to me about the influencer. That's interesting. And because I think that when I think influencer, I think an outside person. I think, someone that, if I had one in a student market or just, near IU, I might find someone somehow that has just like an egregious amount of followers. And then you just approach that person, like message them and say, what would it cost for you to come lay by my pool? Like, is that what we're talking about? Or,
so, it's a great question because I look at influencer, that term sometimes like that too, but I also see it as employee engagement. So like, for example, you are an influencer for Gray Residential, right? You're doing this awesome podcast and, you're producing a ton of content. So you are an influencer on behalf. I feel like I'm an influencer for apartments.com. So there's no reason why your site teams can't be an influencer too. And maybe you set some guidelines for them and say, okay, the expectation is to post 3 times a week. The expectation is I need X amount of pieces of content. And maybe in exchange for some things, or maybe it's just becoming a part of their job description versus a nice to have, or to your words, like an afterthought, like make it more intentional. Like this is part of your job.
Yeah. I can't remember which podcast it was, but I think it might've been with Matt from Real Link. We talked about influencer being a far more exciting, title, or just part of it. Like my daughter is 17 and she's convinced that she should absolutely make money and be an influencer. And I'm like, well, what do you have to give? Like what's different? She's like, oh, I'm hilarious. And I'm like, well, that is true that you are witty and you are funny, but it's a little bit more than that. But there is a generation, Spencer Gray, his daughter, like she wants to be a YouTube star. So this is how they envision their future and how they envision, whether it's making an impact, whatever that is. So maybe there's a piece of us that should be using that key term as we're advertising and talking to leasing folks. So that way, just because it's relevant, it's a relevant term. So are they posting from their personal page, or you're just meaning like, let's motivate them on behalf of the property to be, all stars in that area?
It would be producing content either for their own company, for their property, not necessarily personal. I think that's a whole nother podcast.
Absolutely. Yes.
But I think, just saying, okay, the expectation is to shoot, 5 cool shots on the property on your iPhone and either kick that into us as your third party manager of your social accounts, or it could be, give us 5 headshots of your employees, their title, their length of time, and do, meet the team Tuesday post. Like it could be very simple as giving them a structured approach, or you could let them go rogue if you feel confident that, they can produce some, and it doesn't have to be polished everything. I love Instagram being polished on the feed, and stories is like a great opportunity to have a little bit more organic, raw behind the scenes. But I mean, you can do so much with an iPhone and make it look great.
Yeah, I like the thought of, and maybe this is a way that a smaller company like mine could accomplish great things. And like maybe just whether that's a quick calendar event or it's a team's task or something like that, that's just like today, take a picture of each of your team members and like that, like where it's very assignment based.
Yep.
Where only one person has to think of what, it is today that we're going to do, and then can kind of, push that out. Who's following us? I mean, I think that there was a time where obviously are we talking mostly about Facebook, Instagram, TikTok? Is there any other platform that we should be
I mean,
considering?
if you have the bandwidth, I would recommend Pinterest too, because it's great for SEO. I think you can, garner some additional free traffic from that, but nothing's, at a huge magnitude, but it's still SEO value. But I think the people that are following you are probably going to be a combination of your employees, your residents, your prospects, possibly ownership groups looking at the page too, which I think is impressive, to make sure that you've got a polished footprint there, maybe even developers. So you could have a wide net, but it also depends on how much you're marketing. I see so many channels in our space where they may have good content, but there's no eyeballs. They're not doing any sort of promotion through email or through texting or in their welcome packages, whatever the case is. Like, there's got to be some level of effort to get the eyeballs there as well.
Yeah, that's what makes me wonder, like, audience is important. And so, sometimes when someone's talking about what they're putting out there, I'm just like, well, who's seeing that? Especially when it's like, and I hate it. I hate the thought of it, but like marketing, promotions that are obviously intended for a prospect's eyes, and that being, the hyper focus on like possibly on a Facebook page that's pushing over to Instagram anyway. It's like, is that effective? Is that what it's for necessarily? Or is it, to your point, like it's just for, lack of trust? I actually had one of my questions was like, what's better? No social media, or bad or old content?
I'd say, I guess, I don't know. It's a tough question because I'm diehard social media. I feel like everyone should have it. And it being well maintained, but I would maybe say no social media, because you don't want that prospect coming through the journey and that being a decision factor for them, and bailing out just because of that. Right. And we see that with reviews all the time. If you have 5 negative reviews and nothing positive, and that's the only thing that they have to look at, they're going to be like, I don't trust this property, I'm out.
Yeah.
But I also see there's a lot of dormant pages in our industry, and I don't believe that it's necessarily like prohibiting leases. So I just think if you can keep it somewhat active, that's important. But if you have like a 10-year gap, which I have seen, that's too much. You can see like, oh, they must have let that person go, or, the property sold, or which we have a lot happening in our space. So there's all these Facebook pages that are caught in no man's land and no one has ownership of them. So it creates confusion for the consumer. But so that's a tough question.
I was just thinking, like, and I know I've told you this, but I still have, back when we were selling that first product with Oodle Marketplace, or with the Oodle partnership with the Marketplace, many of our customers didn't know how to set up a Facebook page, certainly didn't know how to set it up with the best practices in mind in terms of just, photos and branding and logos. And so I remember sitting at home in the evenings on Publisher. I think I was on Microsoft Publisher back then. Okay. Just making sure that the logo fit just right, and, creating those pages for people with the true heart to help them, because they wanted to be active in the space and they believed in it, and, believed in us. But like, there were some basics that need to happen. And I still think there's a couple of them that I'm an admin on, and I'm not doing anything sinister, nor would I ever, but I also don't want them to completely lose control. I keep thinking at some point someone's going to buy this property, and they're going to message, and I'm going to get it and be able to say, oh yeah, I'll hand that off to you, no problem. But being here at Gray, and we're in acquisitions, that's what we do. And I definitely know for sure I have a couple pages out there that, I've sent messages to whoever controls it, and they're reading it because I can see it, and they're not responding to me. And so the processes aren't always so easy, but gosh, they're worth it, and it's important to do it.
Yeah. And you bring up a great point. I see it all the time, day to day. And I hope for the next few years that our industry really looks at weaving social media into the acquisition strategy to have a better handoff, because right now it's clunky. We see some pages that have so much traffic and so much good engagement, but they just get lost because there's not a proper handoff. And my hope would be that, marketing teams can kind of sell up and say, hey, this needs to be a part of the process.
Yeah. And I think that in places where they have marketing teams, it probably is. And then in other places, we're hyper focused on making sure people can apply online and leases, and that we can accept rent. I think that's the sort of, in the hierarchy of importance, it probably does, and sometimes they're quick acquisitions. I think,
Oh, yeah.
I think when it's a longer, due diligence closing period, then certainly that's an easier thing, to do and have a handle on. But yeah, don't look at my sites, or at least don't look at all of mine right now today, because we definitely have that issue. I want to just maybe see if in terms of, do prospects, is there some indicator there that they're using it to make a decision that you've seen? Like, you mentioned earlier, like, okay, maybe they're on apartments.com and then Google and then do the Facebook page. Like, do you all have analytics to see, obviously, like how often someone clicks can they go right from apartments.com to our social if we link it?
Not directly from apartments.com.
Okay.
But most people are going from apartments.com, going into Google, doing a branded search term for the apartment they just popped into on apartments.com. And that's really where the property gets found and it stands out due to its visibility. So making sure you've got name, address, phone, website, your social content integrated to your Google business profile. And then they start poking around at your reviews. They look at your star rating, your total volume of reviews. They filter by newest. And that's where we see leads start to fall out of the funnel. And that's where, positive reviews and social proof and user-generated content, all those testimonials can really boost your trust or credibility, increasing the likelihood of that conversion happening. And then I also believe that the high quality content will help surface up and grab the audience's attention and bring them through the door too. Then after they poke around on your social and rep, then they're hitting your website. So you want to make sure that it's easy to convert. But then it doesn't stop there. It goes to the last stage of the funnel, which is advocacy. So that's that post-purchase expectation versus reality. That's the moment when the property gets talked about based on that renter's experience, and they leave a review. And it's that review which is now influencing the next renter coming through the journey, which is also known as Google's zero moment of truth. And so I strongly believe that, reputation, business listings, and social media play such a strong part of the overall funnel.
So maybe too, like using that posh word of influencer, we should be using that when we're trying to request reviews, maybe just to keep it, fresh, to say like, hey, are you an influencer? We hope you had a great experience, or we know you had a great experience, or whatever ultimately that is, especially if they've communicated that to us. We should probably have something. We should probably have some content right there that shoots back to them that looks fresh and fun, that says like, hey, you've just, earned a badge or whatever. I don't even know, because they left us a positive review. I mean, we just got a really good review yesterday, so I was excited.
That's great.
My inbox, and like every time, and it's real. I'm in property management and I've been in it for a really long time. So like you see something come across that's like new review for, and you go like this. You're like, I'm gonna click that. I'm gonna hope for the best. But I have definitely seen some sites that have that, and like you said, that cycle of advocacy. And I find it interesting too. So you said that they sort by most recent.
Yeah, because what I think what hurts a lot of businesses is you've got old reviews out there because maybe it was, an acquisition, change of management. No one has been actively soliciting, and those old reviews are getting indexed on the homepage of Google in the GBP. And that's what's influencing a renter, because sometimes renters are too lazy to go sift through all the reviews, and they're just looking at what's on the knowledge panel. But if you're a smart shopper, like for me on Amazon, they're already kind of categorized by date. But in Google, you do have to filter by newest, because I think it auto sets to most relevant or something. So filtering to newest allows you to see like, okay, have they changed hands? Like, what's going on here? Like, what's up today?
Yeah. I wonder how Google determines what is most relevant. Is
I
it just
don't know.
something that people spend the most time reading, or because if that's the case, I had a property one time that had a review that had to have been a full 8.5 by 11 if it had been on paper. It's probably one of the worst ones that I've ever seen. And it was a very unique circumstance. And, that's the other thing. I think the public feels like they have leverage against us. Mm-hmm. And so they'll send these, requests like, for example, I can't believe you're going to charge me a termination fee. Yes, I signed the lease. Yes, I knew exactly what it was. But how dare you actually, go through with this? And if you don't do something about it, I will leave you a review. I will take it to the public. I will, whatever, to the point where at one property, and this was a fantastic property, someone created they bought a URL that was don't live here.com or something
Oh,
like that. Like,
Lord.
I used the property name and I was like, are you kidding me? And it was all because they wanted out of their lease. They got pregnant. They weren't planning on that and made the decision that they felt like they needed to have a different living situation and just wanted to get out of their lease without fees. It's the most common thing that we have, if I'm being honest. They just don't want to honor an agreement. And so they created a website and said that they would put money behind it. And I'm just like, man, that is some real hate. That was some real hate. But what is your best advice when you get, if you have a string of them? Is it just go to other residents and be like, please write us a review? Do people see right through that?
Well, I think you should be requesting reviews all the time on a consistent basis. So that way you're not sending flags into Google that you're just doing these one-time campaigns, which look a little spammy. So
Yeah.
I think as you get a new lease, as you get a renewal, as a positive work order is completed, like think about the ongoing life cycle of the renter. But if you are in a sticky situation, it doesn't hurt to kind of get some of your low-hanging fruit, some people that have been at the property for a long time that are most likely going to leave you a great review, and kindly asking them, and maybe you stagger that so it doesn't look like you're getting a flood of them overnight, but 4 or 5 of them is not going to send any signal to Google, so you should be all right. So I don't think that's a bad idea. And then take all of your positive reviews that you get on Google or on your website and include that into your social media campaigns, into your content, because that'll be, further social proof for someone that pops into your page. They've got it, accessible to them.
Yeah. The words of the public, obviously better for sure. What other industries do you think are doing, I always like to, and in this office, we like to look at other industries. What industries out there are using social strategy really, really, really well at this point?
I would say there's probably 4 or 5 that are doing it really well. I think travel and hospitality is killing it, especially in the hotel space. Real estate is doing a really good job. Realtors have taken a lot of pride in their social media. They're investing in it. Health and wellness is doing a good job. And then fashion and beauty. And I would say, fashion and travel and real estate is probably the 3 top categories for us to look at for inspiration. And travel and real estate obviously mostly correlate with us, but I love fashion because that's where I learn all the trends. I'm seeing the new technology. I'm seeing all the things that they're doing. I'm pulling inspiration from here and there and then integrating that into our strategies. Or I just feel like they're so much more advanced. They're on the pulse. They understand what's happening.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm not saying that my daughter is she's not a buyer. I'm the buyer on her behalf. She's my little broke best friend. But, her homecoming dress she found on TikTok. And I just was like, this is where we are today. Yeah. This person was actively wearing it. It was in an environment that seemed more organic than just shopping through a shop. So it was on a human that, for whatever reason, Finley could just see herself just like that person. And she's like, Mom, she's like, I think I found my Hoko dress. And I'm like, okay, and I think it came from England. I don't even know. I just remember taking a really, really long time. It was beautiful and it was perfection. And, I don't know if that's where if she's 17, and I'm not saying she's renting next year, even the next couple of years by herself, obviously I'm going to be her influencer. But how far away are we from that being a more important way to market?
Yeah, I mean, I think the pandemic created a huge shift in social media, and with brick and mortar closed, it forced a lot of brands, and with large brands, all of their production facilities were shut down. So it forced them to lean into influencers to do a lot of the work for them. And that's why we see it a little bit more flexible and laid back now, because COVID really pushed that, and brands are more accepting of that raw look. But you're starting to see influencers they really exploded, especially with TikTok during the pandemic. Yeah. So I feel like that's the new norm. Yeah. And the path to purchase changed after the pandemic. And so it's so easy to just swipe up or click through, or, e-commerce has it made on social media. I think it's a little bit more challenging for our space because we don't have an affiliate code per se where you can just click and buy. Yeah. But I think it's a good indication that change just happened in the last 3 or 4 years. And then you're looking at what's to come with all of this youth and what they're accustomed to. I think operators, we need to be prepared for that for the next generation. This is the expectation now.
that's what I keep thinking. It's like social to me feels like how we feed it to them, what not necessarily how they search.
Right.
I'm not saying that that's impossible, that they wouldn't, go and search, but it just does feel like we have to really, push and push and push. And then it's like, at some point, if it's glamorous to enough people, they just think it's great for them too. I mean, recipes, Finley will say, Mom, we're going to make this, sriracha mayo potatoes and steak tonight. And I'm just like, oh, okay, child. I mean, I was making grilled cheese at that point, and this demographic wants to make gourmet meals because they are seeing it happen so quickly. And I find that interesting too. And maybe this, in terms of, using video, coupling video with, or just rich media in general. We watch someone make a meal in 30 seconds or less. We can obviously understand that there's a time lapse in there, but we watch that happen and we make a decision quickly. And sometimes it is a brand decision, because sometimes they're clearly selling not olive oil, but like something like that.
Right.
And they were like, oh, we have to go to Trader Joe's and get that, because that's the thing that was in there, and it works, and we do it. And it took 30 seconds. So it's like, also, I think there's a piece, and maybe you tell me if you also have seen this, like, I'm not sure we have to belabor our leasing process so much if our social was good and fast and clean like that.
Yeah, and the consumer wants speed. Now, nowadays everything has to be fast, and that's the expectation, is to buy everything faster. I mean, that precedent was set with Uber, with Amazon, all of that, and it's only continuing to grow. So I think speed is going to be very important for our industry.
And we're not the fastest industry to move.
That's okay. We got a lot of things on our plates.
Yeah, thank you for the grace on that. Because, and I'm not saying that we're just like anchored in old ways. I don't think that is the case. We obviously have certain laws we have to abide by. We are always going to be tethered to this giant lease agreement document. We're tethered to screening practices. We're tethered to maybe property management systems that, it'd be nice if people could pay on Cash App or Venmo. My daughter's Venmoing me, she's paying me back for her hair getting done. I just think like the exchange of funds, obviously being quick, and, we're going to need our platforms to step it up so that way we can step it up, because we're not going to develop those things on our own. But I do think the speed is definitely just really, really important. So like if you pick, fashion feels like it's so far from multifamily, and real estate, obviously does feel a little bit closer in hospitality, but like pick one of those and tell me, what we could model and do quickly and easily.
Yeah, I think the quickest thing is to look at realtors. They do a great job. They're constantly promoting their open houses, what's sold, what's on the market. They're showing, rent comparables, or what is the state of the market. They're doing events. They're doing like branded posts that just like might have their coffee mug on a book and it looks styled and it looks great. That's an easy one to look at. I would also look at hotel space, because I think what's great about that is if you have two hotels next to each other, you have the same features and amenities, the same price point. Someone might poke it around in social media and be like, but do I see myself there? Like, what's the vibe going to be like? And they might choose the better vibe, the one that has better social media when it comes down to decision making. But I love fashion because I feel like they're super cutting edge. I'm learning a lot about influencer marketing. I'm seeing the shift from bloggers back in the early 2012. Those have then become influencers where they're promoting on behalf of a brand with a link that's got attribution back to that influencer. And now we're seeing them turn into creators. So all of those bloggers have built up an audience for the last decade, and they are now creating their own brands, and their fans are funding their little businesses. And I saw that with a blogger just recently. She was a blogger, then became influencer, and now she launched her own fashion line. And now she's in Nordstrom. And so it's funny because she used to be influencer for Nordstrom, and now Nordstrom is picking up her clothing line. So it's like this full circle moment. So I'm personally learning a lot from fashion. I'm picking up on new tools and the way they create their content. I think that they do the best job at batching their content. So if you look at a fashion influencer, you can tell that when she's doing her outfit switches and all of those reels on, maybe it's a haul from Target or a haul from
Yes.
Walmart. We all see that.
Absolutely, we do.
Yeah. She's filming 4 of those in one day and not, 4 across the stretch of the month. She's, doing the same one. She's batch creating, and then she's slowly launching that because it helps her work smarter, not harder.
And if all I do is watch those and I don't actually, link out and purchase yet, is that there's still a value, correct? Like for her or him, they can communicate the views or the length of time. Like I'm convinced, and you can tell me, I have no idea, but like on some of the cooking videos are very fast. And then there are some that take a really long time. Is there some value in terms of what they're selling because it's a length of time that someone stays on their video?
Well, the ones that I can't stand are the really, really short ones because they make you watch it 50 times more just to get the last clip or to understand what the last bullet point was or the last number. And that's intentional. They do that because they want the repeat traffic coming back to it. And then the longer form, of course, you see that with YouTube Shorts and just YouTube in general. Like people love that content. Both of them resonate well. I think the shorter frame content, 7 to 9 seconds, is performing best, but a lot of that is intentional. 7 to 9 seconds. Yeah.
Interesting though. But it's like, we obviously can convey something in 7 to 9 seconds, which I find not interesting. I just, from a leasing perspective, from that leasing experience, like what we're always constantly evaluating and reevaluating, there are pieces that we want to stay very personal, but then it's like, we just need to move them faster through the funnel using tools like that, using things they're used to, really giving them confidence in our brand, not messing it up by sending them to, some awful post or, something like that. I don't know. We can get them really far. We can get them really far down the funnel without having to meet us. And then maybe that last minute is how we turn them into an advocate because the move-in process went well. And that is human, or because the application process, like at some point they do have a question.
Yeah,
legitimately, but it can come just in the very end. Also, how fun if you were a prospect and through all the things that you search, like if you were a super searcher and you read the reviews, like if I'm shopping for clothes, I read, if it's pants specifically, I will read almost every review.
Oh yeah.
Pants. But if somebody's out there shopping for an apartment the way that I shop for pants, they can, they're going to get themselves really, really far down the funnel. And then I'm just like, okay, let's not mess it up. We just have to not mess it up. Maybe. I don't know. That's
yeah. It really does help with credibility, trust, and that social proof.
Yeah. I love social proof. I'm going to use social proof. Okay. I got last question. I have to ask you this. What is your favorite social platform and why?
Hands down, Instagram. I love it. I like that it's not as cluttered as Facebook. I like that it's pretty and aesthetic. I also love that stories are raw, authentic, and I can shop right from the app in like 1 second. I can buy something, like to your point of your daughter, like it's very easy to convert. But I also love Pinterest. Pinterest was a big part of my, I would say the last 2 decades was your planning life, like your first home and my wedding. And once I had a baby and like all the things, and I've used that for major milestones. And now we're doing renovations and I'm all in Pinterest. So I love that platform for that reason too.
I love Pinterest. I'm not sure how many people identify it as a social media platform. I mean, it is obviously because just, by definition with the content, I think it's like we're engaging. That's like the one place that feels like I'm engaging with a brand and not with a human. I'm not, but
exactly.
But maybe I need to follow. You have some public boards that I can follow and I can pin and repin things in your house. I could, right?
Yeah. It's really good from a brand's perspective to have a great looking piece of content, good description, good title on it, and a link back to your website. So anytime someone repins it, you're getting the attribution and the traffic credit, the referral source back. So I see a lot of SEO value. And then for us as a consumer, it's quick clicks, but it's more for us for inspiration and visual. And I guess they're making their money through their ad model because I'm not quite sure. It's very different than Instagram where there's so much commerce happening there.
Yeah. We've got beautiful, beautiful clubhouses and spaces that we should be putting up there, making sure that we have all the right tags for it, but like, I'm just thinking, if somebody searches like navy blue cabinetry, gold hardware, there are absolutely some stunning clubhouses out there that are built that way. So
Yeah.
why wouldn't that brand recognition and SEO, to your point, start to be used in that way? I remember you said one time, like about Pinterest specifically, you were like, it's kind of like my fantasy football.
Oh yeah, it's fantasy football for girls. I love it.
I must confess, I wake up not every day, but almost every day. And before I'm ready to like actually hit the floor, I think of one clothing piece that I plan to wear. So if it's like, and I'm actually super, I'd dress like a pilgrim if I could. I'm pretty boring. I'm surprised I'm wearing stripes today, but nonetheless, it might be like blue Oxford shirt, or it might be, navy pants work outfit. And that's how I start my day. And that's how I plan my outfit. And obviously I'm subject to whatever clothes are in my closet, but they have good ideas.
Yeah, it's great for inspiration.
It's great for inspiration. Well, you've been inspiring today. I think that if nothing else, I feel better that we can do it, and we can do it well. And especially for me, being in a smaller company or a startup, don't have a marketing department, but it's like everyone's part of the marketing department, whether we're crowdsourcing content, from our own team members, like we're all part of the marketing department collectively. And if we're batching content, and just paying attention to some other industries and not stealing ideas, but being inspired by it, I feel better. I feel like I feel better and worse at the same time, because all of a sudden I'm like, man, I gotta look at my pages, and I gotta get control of everything. But I appreciate so much that you sat down and had a chat with me. You're a speaker. You just said on the circuit. So that means anybody who has a circuit, in that way, is obviously just a, well-known name. And you've been speaking about this topic, just eloquently for many, many years. So I really appreciate your time. And obviously, as I say every time, like and subscribe to The Complex for more information as we try to run these multifamily communities in as relevant, exciting, and fresh ways as possible. Thanks, Erica.